I'm here today virtually with Kyle the Monster Nelson from Huntsville, Ontario, coming off another big win at Noche UFC. Kyle, let's start there. Obviously, just a couple of weeks ago now. How you feeling coming out of that one?
I feel great. I was able to, with the fight went the distance, but I didn't really take, any damage. Had a little cut under my eye, so got a couple stitches in that. But yeah, physically, I'm in great shape. So right back into training.
Well, good stuff. And we'll get to more about that in just a minute. Want to go back and rewind to earlier this summer. Obviously, UFC 289. I was there, caught you in the press conference after the fight. And that opportunity, that chance to not only fight at home again, because you've done that a couple of times, but also get that first win for the UFC on Canadian soil. Your previous win had come, outside of Canada. What did that mean to you?
Yeah, it was great, and it was one of the opportunities. My first fight was in Toronto, but again, it was on super short notice, a couple of days, so I didn't really get to absorb any of that. And then same with the fight in Ottawa. I kind of felt like it just kind of rushed by. Whereas this fight, I was able to kind of take my time. We did the ceremonial weigh-ins and stuff like that, and I got to meet a lot of fans at the hotel during fight week, and then obviously after the fight and stuff. But I definitely got an opportunity to kind of take it in a little bit more and definitely enjoy it. And so I think it was definitely one of my biggest wins so far, not just being a win, but being a win in Canada and getting to, kind of enjoy it with all the fans.
Well, absolutely. And, did it feel the pandemic kind of messed things up a little, right? Because for a while there were no shows. You couldn't fight in Canada had you wanted to. So did it feel though kind of like getting the monkey off your back in this case?
Yeah, it was great just to have the UFC back again with all the, whatever travel bans and stuff that went on during the pandemic for them to come back. I know, Canadian fans have been waiting a long time for it. So, luckily they came back and we were able to get a show, over in the West Coast. But I know a lot of our kind of East Coast and kind of Central Canadians are really hoping for a show, here in Toronto in the new year. So it'll be nice. I think it'll be just as big, if not bigger, to have the UFC come back to Ontario.
Absolutely. And we've heard rumors about that. Maybe January 20th. That's a date that's floating around for Toronto. Is that your plan right now? Obviously, you called up Cub Swanson after your fight, but regardless of opponent, is the plan to kind of target that date?
Yeah, 100%. If the UFC isn't going to come to Toronto, although it definitely seems like they're leaning that way, I'd rather even fight, in December or get something a little bit sooner. But if they're going to be coming to Canada, yeah, I don't mind waiting, an extra month or two, to get the opportunity to fight, in basically what would be my hometown of Toronto is kind of the closest thing to Huntsville that, the UFC is ever going to be coming to.
Yeah, you're kind of in the middle there of Ottawa and Toronto. So in a way, I guess you get two hometown crowds.
Yeah, yeah.
Good stuff. Well, you did, as I mentioned, call out Cub Swanson after that last fight. And we know what happened the last time Cub Swanson was in Toronto. He had the Hall of Fame fight with Doo Ho Choi. I was actually at that bout. It was fantastic to watch live. Is that what you envision in your head when you think about fighting Cub?
Yeah, definitely. That's one of the reasons why I kind of chose him. My last two fights have been fighting kind of up and comers, guys that are new to the UFC with a lot of hype and, undefeated or yeah, on a big streak. So, I just want to start climbing the ranks a little bit. And I think, getting a fight with a UFC legend like Cub will help do that. And then again, Cub's got an exciting style. He likes to stand and bang and stuff like that. So I think again, my style versus his style, we could look at putting on another Hall of Fame performance.
Well, that would be amazing. And you mentioned fighting the up and comers, and obviously Fernando Padilla at Noche UFC, he's one of those, but obviously also someone who is very talented. And you got the main card placement there. What was it like though, going from the Vancouver card where you're the hometown hero to the Noche UFC card, which is in Las Vegas, but celebrating Mexican independence, and you're fighting a Mexican fighter, and obviously a lot of Mexican fans in the crowd, getting the ultimate kind of or the opposite kind of reaction.
Yeah, yeah, it was interesting. The crowd was almost the same, as far as them being excited. It's just, yeah, in my hometown, they were cheering for me, versus in Vegas, they were kind of cheering against me. And I've fought in Vegas before, and I believe I've got a lot of fans and stuff in Vegas. But I mean, just the overwhelming amount of Mexicans that travel from in the U.S., maybe even Mexico, to be at that card. Even walking the strip of Vegas, like it didn't really matter where you went. It was majority of Mexicans there for Noche UFC. So it was definitely interesting. And again, just with the energy of the crowd, in Vancouver, I got to absorb some of that energy and kind of use it for my fight. The energy in Vegas, I kind of had to block it out and not let it get to me. But I feel like I did a good job at that.
Well, you definitely got the result you were looking for. Very cool concept, celebrating Mexican independence. It would be cool if they could do Canada, but I think International Fight Week falling on that first week of July, we're not getting a Canada Day card in the end.
Yeah, no, definitely. Yeah, being that close to July 4th, their kind of Independence Day, it'd be tricky. But you never know. Never say never. It would be definitely cool to see something like that. But yeah, I think definitely with July 4th, they always do the big show down in the States.
Absolutely. Well, we kind of touched on Huntsville, your hometown. You also train at House of Champions in Stony Creek. I'm curious, like as a fellow Canadian, and I don't know how many people who are going to be watching this, listening to this, are familiar with Huntsville or the Muskokas, but when we think of Canadian small towns, we think of hockey. How does Kyle Nelson go from small town Canadian kid to the UFC? How did you go down that path in the martial arts?
It started when I was young, watching Rocky and kind of getting, inspired by combat sports, boxing at the time. And then, it wasn't until I got into high school where I actually, started pursuing it and found kickboxing and jiu-jitsu and stuff like that. And then shortly after that, I saw, the UFC, the first season of The Ultimate Fighter is what got me into it. So, but coming again from a small town in Huntsville, there was one small gym that was about a half hour away. It was called Muskoka Kickboxing. So I trained there. But as far as training partners, like nobody really competed professionally or even amateur in kickboxing or MMA or anything like that. The most was, some jiu-jitsu tournaments and stuff like that. So I started out doing that. And even for that, we had to travel, a couple hours down to Toronto and stuff like that. And then as I got more serious, my coach would take me to train in Barrie or Toronto or Markham, and we'd travel a lot just to, get a training session or two in. And that's where I started to kind of, build my skill set and stuff. And in my mind, I always thought, I'm just going to go to the UFC. And my coach would always, kind of talk to the class, like, it's like 1% of 1%, make it to that level. So, but it never really crossed my mind that, how big of a task it would be coming from a small town with such a small population and no other fighters or high-level martial artists to climb all the way up to the UFC. But it's definitely been a long journey.
I want to ask this, just kind of a silly question, but are you a bit of a celebrity at home now? Muskokas get a fair amount of foreign celebrities coming in the summer for the cottage life. I think David Beckham was there over this past summer and his wife. But do you get recognized at this point?
Yeah. Again, Huntsville's not a big town anyway, so like a lot of people I went to school with, or like my family's been in Huntsville for like well over 100 years. So if I didn't go to school with them or know them from around town, they're probably some sort of extended family of mine just from, my family being there for so long. So definitely, get recognized a lot, in Huntsville. But now even as I travel, whether it's in Toronto or Stony Creek or Hamilton, or I'm starting to get recognized a lot more from, from UFC fans and stuff like that all over.
Well, very cool. I used to spend summers up fishing on Fairy Lake in Huntsville. My aunt and uncle lived up there at the time. So small world, but how'd you wind up at House of Champions in Stony Creek?
So I started doing pro MMA, and I did my second pro fight for the Score Fighting Series, which was like one of the bigger shows here in Ontario way back when now.
Oh, it was, yeah.
So that was, I believe, 2012. And while I was fighting, Alin Halmagine, my head coach now, he was there. I believe he was doing the kind of the cut man work and stuff like that. So I got talking to him a little bit there after my fight, and he invited me down to come train. So we kind of organized it, and I came down, did like one session, got to train with like Dennis Purick and I think Shane Campbell might have been here at the time, and so like basically all the the highest level guys back then and even still now still competing. So it definitely opened my eyes to a whole nother level of martial arts and kickboxing and stuff. So I just started coming down. I would come down and train the Monday night and then go back to Huntsville. And then one of my friends from high school started going to, I think, college down in Oakville or university or something like that. So I'd come down Monday, train, stay with my buddy, and then train Tuesday and then head back up. And then just over time, I just started staying, an extra day, an extra day, an extra day. And then now I'm here usually Monday to Thursday and then back up in Muskoka, Friday, Saturday, Sunday.
Well, you're putting a lot of miles on the old car doing that, but very cool. And talking of all this kind of training around Ontario, have you seen a resurgence of Canadian MMA in the past little bit? Because for a while, like you mentioned, there was a Score Fighting series, and when that went away, there wasn't a lot of promotions after. And now we've got BTC and PFC, and a couple of the ones from around the country have also made stops in Ontario. And now that the UFC has come back, especially, have you seen a bit of a resurgence and interest, and more people coming into the gyms?
Yeah. I mean, even just like on social media, some of the like whether it's followers or just interactions and stuff, especially since UFC Vancouver has really blown up. It's great that because I mean we've always had good, I mean, strong MMA fans, especially in the GSP days, but then COVID kind of hit and then everything died down so much that it wasn't really until UFC Vancouver where everything kind of started livening up again. And again, like I said, I'm getting a lot more followers, a lot more people messaging me about training and stuff like that. So yeah, I definitely think MMA in Ontario and Canada is going to be taking off in a big way really soon, and even more so if the UFC comes to Toronto.
Well, that's very cool. It's cool that you get to be a part of that as well. Now, back at Noche UFC, I actually answered a question for a colleague of mine, Gabriel, who asked about your family and what moment you would choose to show them. And you actually talked about, you know, I want to show them the hard work, the work ethic that it takes to do this. And I thought that was very cool. I mean, what does it mean to you to kind of get to show that to your kids?
Yeah, I mean it's interesting being a parent. It's there's a lot of stuff you don't think about until you have kids, and how you want to not only portray yourself, but how you want to introduce your kids to certain things in the world. Because obviously you have to kind of regulate that. You can't just show them the whole world at once and be like, here you go, try and absorb all this. So to try and introduce them to little bits here and there, and that they can process and absorb and stuff like that. So especially with something like my sport, how it can be, it can be a little bit violent or brutal at times, and there's blood and stuff like that. And that's something that when my kids are younger, I want to shelter them from a little bit. I don't want them to see me, even when I win fights, sometimes, I'll get a cut and stuff like that. And that can be scary for them when they're, really young. My one son's 3 right now. So I try to shelter them from stuff like that. But again, something that's transferable to all aspects of life, no matter what your dream is, your passion or your goals, is the hard work and the discipline and all that kind of stuff. So that's, one of the biggest things I want to give to them, because I don't know if they're going to want to, pursue this sport. Hopefully they find something's a little bit easier on the body. But if I can give them this hard work and this self-discipline, and teach them a little bit about, respect and some of those things that you learn in martial arts, I think that's kind of the best thing I can do, in my position as a father.
It's funny, almost every fighter I talk to who has kids, when it comes to, would you want them to go into it? They always kind of go, maybe if they chose something a little less dangerous, less hard on the body. But I guess it's hard if you truly fall in love with it. I mean, that's your passion, that's your passion.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, like, I think martial arts, or I mean, competing in professional MMA has got to be one of the hardest things I think I could have, ever done. And I think, we all need challenges like that in our lives. And So yeah, I hope they find something that is really difficult for them to do, and they find a way to push themselves through it to, to achieve some sort of success in whatever they choose to do.
Well, hope it all works out for them. That's way off in the future. But one thing you mentioned at Noche UFC as well, I think you said you want to have a lot of kids. I'm curious. I was an only child. My mother, the oldest of 9. Where on that spectrum do you consider a lot of kids? Like, what number are you looking at, ballpark?
Probably 6, I think. So we got so I got two sons from a previous relationship. We've got one on the way with my fiance, and then we're thinking maybe 3 more after that. So it'd be kind of 6 total, and then we'll see. I've always been interested in like foster care and stuff like that, and maybe adopting. So we'll see. As my kids get a little bit older, again, I really, really enjoy, being a parent and, teaching kids and trying to bring them up, strong and really prepare them for this world. And that's something I enjoy doing. And I get to coach, young kids and get to do that a little bit as a coach and stuff. But yeah, there's something about being a father that I really love. And I don't think that's going to stop when my kids are, 18 or 20 or stuff like that. I feel like there's still going to be stuff that I want to, give to the next generation. So whether it is just through coaching or, maybe adopting or foster care or something like that.
The next post-fight bonus, I think, needs to go to a minivan with that plan.
Yes. My oldest son, he just turned 9 and he's been bugging us about getting a minivan, and my fiance wants a minivan as well. Even just the traveling we do from Stony Creek up to Huntsville all the time, it's hard to truck all of our stuff around. And I don't know if you've ever driven one, but they're real smooth. They're pretty comfortable ride. So yeah, hopefully the next fight or two we can look at getting something like that.
All right. So you just said it there. You're bringing the whole crew down when you come down to Stony Creek.
So yeah, so right now it's just me and my fiance. My sons stay up in Huntsville right now with their mom. But as we're kind of working through some stuff, I'm hoping to be able to bring them down here and again have them, get to see firsthand how how hard I train and kind of my nutrition and all the aspects of kind of healthy living and hard work and stuff like that. Yeah, so hopefully we'll get to do that in the near future.
Well, that'll be fantastic. Hey, Kyle, I want to thank you again for the time today. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to ask you one more, actually, though, before I let you go. We talked about Cub Swanson, the possibilities. Of course, Cub's a guy who gets called out a fair bit. He's in high demand, let's say. If you don't land that fight, is there anybody else on the radar who you think, hey, this would be a pairing that would really produce some fireworks?
Yes, there's Nate the Train Landwehr. I think he's another guy that he's been in the UFC a little bit. Obviously not as long as Cub or anything, but I think he comes to fight, puts on fireworks, and again, he's not a brand new guy coming into the UFC. So that might be somebody that's outside the 15. The UFC doesn't really rank, but maybe somebody that I'm a little bit closer to in ranking.
Absolutely. I love that idea. He is a guy, like you said, that comes to fight. I think that's fight of the night potential right there. Kyle, I want to thank you again for the time. Best of luck, whatever fight you do land. Looking forward to it, and pulling for Toronto. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, there we go. Awesome. Thanks a lot for having me on.
Absolutely.